This week I'm going to do a video, the first video in a series of videos that I'm going to call Favorite Hymns of the Hymn Book, or Favorite Hymns of the Hymnal. I'm going to just, every month or so, I'm going to do a series of videos going through my favorite songs in the hymn book and reading the lyrics to the songs. I think we'd get more out of the words if we read them instead of sing them, and so we can catch the words and know what they mean, understand them, and I'm going to give a little history behind the song as well. This week I'm going to do a song entitled I Stand Amazed, and it's also called My Saviour's Love. That's another name for it. I Stand Amazed, or My Saviour's Love, was written by Charles Hutchinson Gabriel, and it first appeared in 1905, and it first appeared in a collection of hymns from another hymn writer. He went by the name of EOXL, and it was in his collection of praises. And now I'm going to read the words that he wrote to the song, and in the description I'm going to provide a link from a YouTube video with the song and with it being sung. And then I'm also going to provide a link that has the history behind the song. And this is also the history that I found on the internet. It's from Saviour hymnal, I believe, is where I have that. But I didn't save the link from it like I have my other videos, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to find the same one, but I will post where you can read the history for yourself. Okay, and before the songs, usually in hymn books, I don't know if it's the way with every hymnal, but it is with mine. The writer of the hymn book gives a verse that kind of sums up the meaning of the song. And the verse in this hymn of My Saviour's Love is Galatians 2:20. And I'm going to read from the King James Bible. Galatians 2:20 says, I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. And I also found another verse. It's from Luke chapter 22, verses 41 to 44. I found that in my research, so I'll read that later. I'll read that at the end. Verse 1 of My Saviour's Love starts out with, I stand amazed in the presence of Jesus the Nazarene, and wonder how he could love me, a sinner, condemned unclean. How marvelous, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Saviour's love for me. For me it was in the garden he prayed, not my will, but thine. He had no tears for his own griefs, but sweat drops of blood for mine. How marvelous, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful to my Savior's love for me. In pity, angels beheld him, and came from the world of light to comfort him in the sorrows he bore for my soul that night. And then another refrain, which is how marvelous, how wonderful, the refrain that I read in the first two verses. The fourth verse, he took my sins and my sorrows and made them his very own. He bore the burden to Calvary and suffered and died alone. Another refrain, then verse 5 reads, when with the ransomed in glory his face I at last shall see, 'twill be my joy through the ages to sing of his love for me. And then we have the final refrain of this song. So, and as I mentioned, this song was written, it first appeared in 1905. And the writer of the song, Charles Hutchinson Gabriel, lived from he was born August 18th, 1956, in a farm in Wilton, Iowa, and he died in Louisiana on September 15th, 1932. He learned music by playing a reed organ, and he was self-taught. He taught himself. And then at the age of 16, he started teaching. And he worked with Grace Episcopal Methodist Church. That was in San Francisco, California. He started teaching there in 1890, and he went from 1890 to 1892 approximately. Then after that, he moved to Chicago in 1912, and while there he worked for a publishing firm that published hymnals and other literature for Sunday schools and church. And I'm not sure how to pronounce this person's name he worked with. I don't know. Yeah, I'll let you read it in the notes. And Charles Gabriel has written between 7,000 and 8,000 songs. And this is a rough estimate because his songs they're hard to know how many he wrote, as he wrote in numerous names, different names to conceal his identity for privacy, I'm guessing, and I don't know why, but artists do that. It's estimated he wrote 35 gospel collections and Sunday school songbooks. And he also wrote for men's and women's choirs. It's estimated he wrote 41 Christmas cantatas, as well as other cantatas. And he wrote other material for Sunday schools and church as well. That's everything that I have on the history of him. There's not too much that's known about this song. There's others hymns that I'm going to cover in future videos that there's more of a story behind the hymn. There's one story that I really love that might be my next video. I don't know, it's hard. I've got a few videos in mind, and this song, it is well. That just has a great hymn, a great story behind the hymn, and I'll have to get in that some other time. But I'm gonna read now Luke chapter 22, verses 41 to 44. This scripture, this passage of verses, it kind of, let's see, in verse 3, it gave detail in the, it was a verse portraying Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane while he was praying right before he was to be crucified. And okay, for stanza 2, this was not stanza 3. Stanza 2 was, for me, it was, in the garden he prayed, not my will, but thine. He had no tears for his own griefs, but sweat drops of blood for mine. And Luke chapter 22, verses 41 to 44 kind of capture that in the Bible, as it says, and he withdrew from them, from his disciples, about a stone's cast, and kneeled down and prayed, saying, Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. And there appeared an angel unto him from heaven, strengthening him. And being in an agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was, as it were, great drops of blood falling down to the ground. So, and Galatians chapter 2, verse 20 that I read, also portray that Christ lives in us because of what he did on Calvary. For born again Christians, Christ lives in us because of what he did. And if we truly accept him and what he did, then he will come in us and change us. And it's an amazing thought, how Luke chapter 22 speaks about his death on the cross, and that he did that just for us. We hear it said all the time in church, if I were the only person on earth, or if you were the only person on earth, if there was only one person on earth, he still would have died for that person. Because Jesus does not wish that anyone should go to hell and perish. And in hell, there is wailing and gnashing of teeth. And in hell, there's great torment in the flames of hell. And Jesus prayed for us. He was in agony for us in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he ultimately died on the cross for us. His blood was sufficient. We don't have to do anything else. We don't have to go through baptism to be saved. I'll talk about this in a future video as well, but baptism just represents a picture of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. If he would have required baptism for salvation, he would have said that in the Bible. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that. Now, it does say that in other religions. For example, the Catechism of the Catholic Church does have that. They do believe that, but it is nowhere found. In fact, I believe it's 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 21 says that that Christians were all baptized into his death, burial, and resurrection. It did not remove, it didn't wash our uncleanness away, but it was the answer of a good conscience towards God. And if we do that to be saved, then we're mistaken. And, we don't have to do that to be saved. We don't have to believe in another God. We don't have to follow Buddha or Hindu or Joseph Smith. Nobody is going to lead us to heaven except Jesus said, John chapter 14 verse 6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. And that is the only way. No. So I just like to encourage you with that hymn today. Thank you for watching, and until next time, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth.